Okay, welcome to what is working title Specs on Sports, where we just sort of cover the wild oddities that is right now the Angels. When football starts, we'll shift over to the Colts, etc., etc. But there's plenty to talk about mainly today. Before we get into it, let me just sort of explain what this is going to be. Well, what this is going to be is sort of an offshoot of things I'm either going to write about over on Last Word Sports. Link to my stuff is going to be down below. What's on my mind lately, or things that are just particularly interesting to me. Today it's to be a lot of Angels, Phil Nevin talk, because there's just a lot to unpack. There's a lot going on. Twitter sphere is exploding from last night, so we're to dive mostly into that. If you like this stuff, leave a like down below for watching on YouTube. This is going to ultimately also be kind of a mini podcast. It'll be about 20-30 minutes. That's sort of the main goal. It'll be probably once a week, twice a week, depending on how things go. With trade deadlines sort of looming, it might be a little bit more as rumors and stuff sort of float out. And when you have a big trade piece, it's Shohei Ohtani. I'm sure there's going to be plenty to talk about. So if you like this stuff, like I said, leave a like down below. This is really going to be kind of where a lot of my time is going to go to, since not streaming anymore. It's going to be a lot of this stuff. It's going to be a lot of writing. There's going to be a lot of stuff sort of coming over the next few days and weeks. So be sure to hang on for that if you're into that kind of thing. I know a lot of my sort of audience, at least for the moment, is very sort of baseball focused. This will give you kind of like that real life stuff from a fan / wannabe journalist perspective, like we're kind of doing here. There's been a little bit here to unpack. We're gonna be going around a lot. There's stuff still sort of coming out. There's a lot of oddities going on right now, and it's a lot of frustration. So we're just gonna dive into it with what happened last night. Oh my. Basically, if you missed it, it was just an absolute nightmare in the ninth inning. In the eighth inning, they went to the closer, Carlos Estevez, who was supposed to handle hard of the order, and then once the bottom of the order is coming up in the ninth, they handed it off to Jaime Barria, and it just sort of unraveled. Situation I do want to spend a lot of time on, and we're going to do it coming up, will be that Bregman-Tucker back-to-back homers, and what was a very lame duck excuse from Nevin, argumentatively, and some people who might be calling the shots. But I want to start here first and foremost here on the topics from Beyond the Halo. Follow him here into the kind of like some more insight sort of thing. But he says, it's all prefaced by saying, I really like Perry and think he's done a lot of positive things, but if Perry has the authority to file Nevin and has chosen not to do so, he deserves some of the blame. Regardless of what you think of Nevin, Perry isn't holding to the same standards as Maddon. Now that was on the claim of what I really wanted to show, which was this. The 2022 Angels had a 15-16 stretch leading up to the firing of Joe Maddon. The 2023 Angels are in a 5-15 stretch. How is Phil Nevin still manager this season? This season, the stakes are undoubtedly higher, and there's even less time to turn things around. And sort of goes into that. Well, what's going on? Well, I think there's two theories behind this. One, arguably, is Nevin is actually Perry's guy. And there was somebody who actually later down in this Twitter thread, I think makes that claim. If it was this Twitter thread, I want to find the tweet. But, oh yeah, it was. Somebody said, Nevin follows the analytic orders from the front office. Office wants to use Maddon didn't. I think that's actually part of this issue. Now, granted, he comes back and says, I guarantee the front office didn't want Nevin calling for a Stephonic bunt when they were down 3 on Friday. Now, what I think really that statement is, I think that statement's partially true. I don't know how far how far reaching that statement is, but I think it's partially true. Reason being is they have a guy by the name of Ray Montgomery now. Now, Ray Montgomery, for those of you who are uninformed, is the Angels bench coach. And I'm going to read his sort of career post-baseball. If in his Wikipedia, so take it as a grain of salt, but I do want to point this out, that this is a little bit fishy, and I didn't think much of it last year. After his playing career, he spent 4 years as an area scout for the Brewers, which time he selected Ricky Weeks, so that was his big guy, was Ricky Weeks. And then He was the Brewers Midwest supervisor for 2 years and their assistant scouting director and national supervisor the next 2 years. In 2009, he turned down an offer to become the scouting director of the Padres because he just moved to Connecticut and did not want to relocate. In 2010, the Arizona Diamondbacks named Montgomery their new scouting director. He served 4 years in that role until he returned to the Brewers as scouting director in 2014. The Angels hired Montgomery as their director for player personnel after the 2020 season. After the 2021 season, the Angels named him their new bench coach. Now, at the time, there were some who were questioning this decision, saying it was a spy from the executive front office to get more things they wanted done. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I never heard of Ray Montgomery. I knew he was like player personnel, but a lot of times player personnel guys do sort of swing over because generally they're not doing one or the other. I didn't realize his entire executive career was straight up in scouting and front office management. This now definitely looks like a big red flag. It really does look like they were trying to get guys in there to relay information that they themselves wanted, not so much what the game was dictating. It feels that way. Is this really what is going on? I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. I can only tell you from the perspective of someone who's been in baseball for most of his life, understands sort of just situational baseball pretty well, and what circumstances happen. Last night has to be a prime example of this. And there, like I said, there's a lot to break down from it. So let's just sort of start getting into it with what's going on. At least in that situation, there's a lot to break down because a lot happened, and there are a lot of answers that I don't think it really get answered because a lot of people don't necessarily have the answers to it. But I find this fascinating, and well, we're gonna just jump into it right here. I think this is it. Okay. So this is just the main crux of what happened, okay? Make it back-to-back homers. Kyle Tucker goes deep again in a disastrous ninth inning for the Angels. Worth noting, Tucker was 5 for 10 with 4 homers against Jaime Barria. Before that, Aaron Loop, a lefty, had been warming. He didn't come in. And the reason for that, you might be asking, well, why was that? The excuse Nevin gave post interview, again, this comes courtesy of Sam Blum of The Athletic, was this. Phil Nevin said the reason Jaime Barria faced Tucker despite the bad history was because of who he had available. Loop was the final pitcher available in the pen. Davis and Moore were down. Davinsky was injured. Espez wasn't available for 2 innings. Again, is this a likely answer? Well, no. And I'm going to explain. We're going to explain why in a second. The situation last night with Bregman was first base is open and you had Aaron Loop. The simple logic there to me is you walk Bregman and you put in Loop lefty and crush fingers and deal with tomorrow because you have a chance of winning today. You know you're calling up at least one pitcher because you're down. You're going to be down to Davinsky, who's injured. So if you call up a guy who can give you a little bit of length, whether he's going to start Wednesday or provide you a little of a gap, it doesn't matter. You have to play to win that game, especially the Angels, who needed to take 2 out of 3 and need to take 2 out of 3 with the Yankees this week. You can't be playing this half-hearted game and just be like, well, shoot, my hands were tied, guys. I didn't want to do that. It doesn't make sense. And it's a lot of this with Phil. It's a lot of this with Nevin. It's just a lot of, why are you doing that? He lets guys go too long. He pulls them out too early. It really is just a mess. Now, where is all this coming from? I couldn't tell you. The simplest answer I can give is that honestly, he takes information from Perry that Maddon didn't. And maybe that's the tinfoil hat theory. I hope to God it is. That's really what happened. That Perry didn't fire Maddon because of a record. He fired him because he wanted an out to get his guy in and wanted a guy who would take the information he was either giving Montgomery, he was giving Maddon and wasn't using. He wanted somebody to take that information. If that's true, then Phil Nevin will never be fired. He won't be fired this season. He's not going to be fired at all. He's going to run out the year. They're not going to care what happens, and they're just going to say, well, it wasn't we tried, injuries took the team down. Because right now the front office has a built-in excuse. They had the excuse of, well, injuries ruined the season, which sure is true to a certain degree. No one loses that much of their lineup and ultimately wins. But ultimately, you had a chance to take 2 out of 3. You failed to take 2 out of 3. And on Monday afternoon recording this, there hasn't been anyone taking responsibility for it. It's a lot of, well, my hands were tied from Phil, which again is lackluster. To me, all this screams is I don't want to push the envelope because I don't think I'm good enough to become a manager again elsewhere, and I'm not going to ruin this opportunity because of what I think is right. I'm going to just continue to be the extension of Perry. If that's the case, then none of this is going to change. We're going to be stuck in this perpetual hole until I guess either Artie just says, Perry, you're gone. You're meddling too much. I don't need a meddler in the GM spot. I need a guy who's going to get this team to win games, get us to the playoffs, get us to the World Series. But the problem is, if that is the case, then someone has to tell either someone what's really going on there, because all we're getting realistically that it states any of this is actually happening are a lot of these weird accounts. I'm going to show them because this is just truthfully baffling stuff here. This is a little out of whack now. This is truly baffling stuff. So this is from an account called Fred Fun Numbers, who says this stuff all the time. Maybe Perry, and this is from earlier this year. This is from 5/17. This is about a month ago. I don't follow this account, but someone put stuff together. I really don't know. This is just weird. I don't get it. If this is someone who knows something, I'd much rather them come out and say who they are than kind of do this, because this just seems weird. It really seems like there's a vendetta. This has that weird feel of that weird Joe Maddon burner account there were rumors of last year. I don't know. This is again Beyond the Halo posted a lot of this stuff. In his tweet he says, yeah, I don't know who this actually is, a family member or something, but that account is way too similar to the Bill Wonka account, and both these accounts claiming things that only people in the know or close to such people would be aware of. Now, again, this is something else entirely, but I just want to point it out because it sort of adds to that speculation of what I've been saying. Maybe Perry will fire another manager and have the coaches again. There is no way it's his fault or Alex Tammon's. So Alex Tammon is a former driveline guy. If you're into baseball, you've heard driveline before. They kind of fix pitchers, give them more velocity. Part of the thing too is that they said he's been sort of involved with pitching in some way, not just analytically. He's actually got his hands in the pot. Again, there's no real true hard evidence for this. It's all speculation, but I just want to throw it out there to sort of just make the point that there at least is leaks going on about here. Another one underneath it from 426 is just have Alex Hammond put on uniform. He's running the team anyway. Sort of scrolling. I can't scroll down here because it's just a picture. Let me do this. Sort of going on here. It says it's not Nevin, it's Perry, Manazzi, and Alex Tammon. They tell Nevin who can pitch and who can't. They tell Nevin what the matchups are. It's all based on Alex Tammon's bogus algorithms. Joe Maddon wouldn't listen to him. That's why he was fired. And then the final sort of picture here that I couldn't just scroll up on was good for Estes. Not all pictures are the same. Some are horses. Some are better the more they pitch. Some are better on one day off. To throw them all in the same bucket is ridiculous. Alex Hammond has no business making the decision based on some bogus algorithm. Again, I don't necessarily know what this stuff is. There's a couple more that I'm going to read. These are from this is from back in 2002. This is the Bill Wonka account. This was the original sort of like people thought this was Joe Maddon burner, where it says, yes, if he wasn't fired along with Reed, Malley, Gallagher, and I'm gonna butcher it, CHITI, then he's coming back. He is an obscus coach that will do whatever Tammon says. Again, for the same account, Bill Wonka. Doesn't matter how I know the focus should be on the fact that it's true. Can you believe Alex Tammon makes actual baseball decisions? It's comical. And what's worse is Perry gives him full range to run in the game decisions. This is, again, these are all from 10/22 of 10/20, the October 22nd of last year. Tammon stinks, unqualified, never played baseball in his life, but is making baseball decisions a joke. And the final tweet, again, is ownership officially hands Manassian. Once ownership officially changes hands, Manassian and Tammon will be gone too. So that's sort of like the deeper conspiracy there, is that there are people who actually are calling this. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I'm just sort of throwing it out there that someone in the know is starting to leak stuff. It's just, does anyone actually believe it? I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't even be giving time to it. But again, it sort of follows that weird line of Bill Wonka last year and then this Fred Funk this year. I want it to be noted that I guess Joe Maddon is doing a podcast that has been on Olney Network. He did recently talk about the Angels, and he didn't say anything bad about him. And if he really did feel this way, he probably would say it, I guess, nationally. I would guess, because if he did it, people would listen. But I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't. I'm just throwing it out there that that's what's been said. Now, flipping over to the lesser of two evils here, let's talk about Buster Olney's question last night. I thought this was fun. I'm only throwing this in there because Buster responded. I didn't expect him to respond. If you don't know Perry Burner, he's an Angels Twitter. I know him. He's very much an Angels fan, but he made the comment, Buster Olney literally walked up to the Angels dugout fence on national television in the middle of the game and asked the head coach if he's going to trade Shohei Ohtani. I hate the baseball media, the burning passion. Olney replied, just a few clues in this tweet that you weren't actually listening. Now, what was the actual question? Well, the actual question was, he did say, well, how do you handle the conversations with him? Which, again, I don't feel is an appropriate question to ask on live TV, regardless. Is if the question there needs to be vague and not directly at Shohei Ohtani. If it's just, hey, there's a lot of rumors about your team right now, how are you handling it with the players? That's a better question. He didn't ask that. This also sparked, that question in particular sparked criticism from Victor Rojas, former Angels play-by-play announcer, podcast host of Angels Win. He said, it's an awful question. No manager, especially on live TV, is ever going to tell you specifics about any conversation with any player, let alone about something of this magnitude, which Nevin has zero say / power over. That's why you get a milquetoast answer. Manager speak from Nevin. A better question is probably gets you more of the subject is, with a player like Shohei being talked about on a daily basis because the upcoming deadline, how do you get him and the guys to stay focused on the day-to-day considering the struggles the team has recently gone through? You had 4 topics: Shohei Ohtani, trade deadline, team struggles, and the manager thoughts. But then again, I didn't go to journalism / broadcasting school. I just figured out this stuff on my own based on common sense. I tend to agree with Victor there. I jumped into this late. My degree's not in this, but I know not to ask that question. And again, and this comes from a person who, when it comes to these interviews, I think they're just jokes anyway. They're robotic answers. That was a terrible question. The fact that Buster only has to respond and say, you weren't listening, you don't understand it. No, I think we do understand it. You wanted it. You reported without any equivocation or anything last week that the Yankees would be motivated to get Shohei Ohtani. They currently sit in last place in the AL East. Now, is the AL East a bad division? No, it's not. It's an actually very good division. The Yankees are well above 500, but they are in last place. They're going to be without Aaron Judge probably till mid-August, so you tell me what Shohei Ohtani in New York is going to do. Now, I did write saying that they should trade for him. The reason why I said they should trade for him is because the Yankees have the prospect capital to do so. Would he actually help the Yankees? Truthfully, probably not, because it's the same situation he had in Anaheim. He'd be by himself. Yeah, he'd have another ace on the mound in Garrett Cole, but in the lineup, there's no one to back him up. You're seeing it now. That offense is going to be anemic. It's a terrible offense without Aaron Judge. Is it a better offense there with Shohei Ohtani? Absolutely. but he's going to be a one-man show until Aaron Judge shows back up again, which who knows that would be. It's about the same timeline as Mike Trout. So what's the big deal here? End of the day, it was a terrible question. It was a horrible question. And the Angels are going to have to go into this next series. Hopefully they can just wipe their nose of sort of the crap that they've had to deal with the last couple days. Will it? Probably not. I assume they're going to lose 2 out of 3 to the Yankees, and then we're going to have this whole smorgasbord. This tempered thing is going to reach its boiling point, and all I can do is cross my fingers that Perry wakes up from whatever stupor he's in and fires Phil Nevin, because Phil Nevin's not going to help. Will not get this team in the postseason. He's not going to do it. Last night proved it. The series against the Yankees is going to prove it even more, and it's going to be an unfortunate situation that only the fans lose because the ownership, executive branches of this team don't care for whatever reason, whether it's, like I said, if Nevin's Perry's guy, it's Perry's guy. That we can't do anything about it. It's Perry sitting on his hands. I don't know. He was with Anthopoulos. There's no word in Atlanta that Anthopoulos pulls any of this stuff. Maybe he does, and maybe Brian Sticker just accepts it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Perry wasn't there when they were in 21. He was already the Angels GM at that point. He was the Angels GM in 22. He was there in 19. So I couldn't tell you what the situation was like in Atlanta, because anytime when they hit their adversity, he was long gone. But it is worth sort of, I just want to throw that out there that we don't know what was going on in Atlanta. I don't know what his role was in Atlanta. He was an associate. He probably just did day-to-day operations. So keep that in mind. Whatever. But again, this was the first episode of Specs on Sports. We do more of this stuff throughout the weeks as it comes along. So thank you so much for checking this out. Leave a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any more of this. My name is Specs, and I am out.